you've had so many interesting experiences. You got to work with Tom Cruise. Was that pretty fascinating? Did you get to meet him before you got to work with him? And sorry if some of this seems like a little bit petty, but I don't know anybody that ever met him.
Oh, yeah, no, Tom. I mean, yeah, Tom's great. I had worked with that director before. I had done 2 movies with him, I think, at that point. Oh, no, I had done 1 movie with him at that point. But yeah, I mean, I flew, I had to audition for it. I think they were down to like a couple guys. Flew and, did audition with Tom. He's very disarming. I mean, but for some reason I didn't feel like I was going to be nervous around him. I have like obviously an immense amount of respect for the guy, but he's such like a consummate professional, and he's one of our great actors. And his filmography, I think, if you attach commercial and critical, I think this run that he's has went on multiple times through his career is going to be very hard to touch. But yeah, he really cares about the work, and he labors over the script. I mean, we would have a meeting or we're filming. He's like, all right, we're going to meet. We're going to talk about, this scene that exists on page like 50 or something. But you always start page 1, scene 1, and you start from the very beginning. And then 3 hours later, when we've had all these side conversations about just different parts of the script, by the time you get to the scene we're there to meet about, it's like, well, it's time to go. We'll meet tomorrow. But nobody works harder. He knows everybody's name. He's first one in, last one to leave. But that movie took a long time to make. Everybody was so committed, and also like you have to work in part and parcel and in concert with the Navy. Navy doesn't stop being the Navy. So if we're filming on a carrier, or we're filming it, in Top Gun, or we're filming all these places, these guys are actively, training nonstop. So. It was a lot. It was a lot to kind of work out. Yeah.
So you're having to like work like in between certain days while they're doing stuff, or at night while they're.
Yeah, like I remember when we were on the carrier, we had like 2-hour window for something to be up on the top deck. But yeah, we were on the carrier for 2 weeks. And I remember I walked by this one sailor. It's like one of my first few days being there. And even though you're on this giant carrier, like you feel like you're on a submarine because the hallways are very cramped. Everything is metal. There's nothing for comfort. There's nothing extraneous. Like that is an active carrier. It's a wartime, carrier. But it's
basically a weapon.
It's a weapon. I mean, we're launching, aircraft from it. And so, but when you're walking around, I mean, all of the hallway, everything is so tight, even though it's this massive vessel. And I walked by this one sailor and I was like, hey, I was like, living the dream, huh? And he just turns to me and he goes, nightmares are also dreams. And he said it's so cold. I was like, we're on the Theodore Roosevelt.
Yeah.
But no, I don't know. I have so much.
Nightmares are
also dreams. Yeah, because I mean,
that's a good
depending
point.
on what your job is on that carrier. I mean, your job placement, you might be 7 or 8, decks below, and just the nature of operations. Sometimes, like you're kind of that's kind of your territory. Oh yeah, absolutely, man.
Do you start?
I have so much respect for.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
when you think
military is best.
What people go through. We're trying to maybe have Gary Sinise come on. I know
There's nobody that's done more.
Yeah.
That guy it's truly been his like life's mission. He's fantastic.
To support veterans. Yeah,
absolutely. Because it's not like the VA, because I did this movie about guys coming home from wars called Thank You for Your Service, and it was based on this book, real guys. And that's kind of what you learn. It's like the VA is not broken. It's just overwhelmed. And so, and for guys to kind of unpack, and our writer-director was telling me, he's like, Miles, we've known how to send guys to war, men and women to war for centuries. Since the beginning of time, we've known how to create a soldier, but we still don't really know how to bring them back. And it's really complicated. Those programs that are, working for, nonprofit, they can only take so many people. Funding is really important.
And the use of people. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just saying it's really tough, and also just with mental health in general, the amount of training that it takes for somebody to be able to appropriately deal with someone with, you know, if it's PTSD, if it's bipolar, if it's schizophrenia, whatever it is, it takes a long time to train somebody. And to be able to get them to sit with the person and be able to potentially, you know, change their meds a little bit, somebody that they trust, somebody who has those skills to deal with it. It's very tough. And yeah, that's actually something I have a lot of advocacy for. I think, and also when you talk to people, I think a lot of people have somebody, you know, in their family or with friends that are, you know, dealt with that, and it's just it's really tough. I think I have just immense amount of empathy, and that stuff's always, you know, it's more or less, it always kind of, some traumatic event happened at some age, and that leads to you know, these mental health issues.
Yeah, that's such a great statement. We don't know how to bring these people home, and then how much even at a governmental level, how much value, you know, should there be just as much of a training and untraining program, you know, as much as you're training people for military and for combat, should there be just as much of an untraining?
And also these guys, you know, the guys that they go to war with, those are the guys that understand more than anybody what they went through. But then, you know, they go from being in, you know, a battalion and, you know, being those guys, and then they come home and everybody kind of disperses, and you know, it's tough.
Well, it's like you were saying earlier, just like being able to be part of a group and have that, you know,
Yeah.
and then suddenly it's different, or suddenly even if
shared life experience,
you're put on leave or something because you're in mental condition, then that's got to be even scarier, because now are you maybe struggling, but also you're away from your group, right?
And also each, you know, depending on what job you're going for in the military, you know, infantry, different branches. You know, it's a numbers game. We need numbers at all times. And so some of these, you know, some of the boot camps are, you know, X amount of weeks, and it's like, here you go, here's your gun. And when you get more kind of, I guess, tier one.
Senior?
Yeah, where I'm just saying, like our special forces guys, I mean, those guys have been through, you know, a lot of training, and you're usually not in those groups until you're certainly not 18. As a Navy SEAL, it takes, you know, a couple of years.
Oh, the last thing I was going to tell you. So, yeah, I went to the Vanderbilt game, but I saw there was two kids there, and they were there with their dad, and their dad had just gotten back from service. He was in Qatar, and right when I saw the kids, like, oh, dude, my dad saw you perform in Qatar. I went over there and did a thing for the military. Like,
was it through USO or something different?
No, it was like they were doing like
something for troops. Something.
Yeah, the president was doing something over there, and they were doing some troops thing. Great. But anyway, it was just, they're like, oh, dude, our dad, and you could just tell. Like, I was like, oh, how long were you there for? And he's like, I was there for a year, and it was just like, I don't know, it was just interesting to see this moment. And I was like, are you guys guys glad your dad is home? You know, and you could just see, like, I don't know, it's just. You just see some of the sacrifice. It was just a moment that I had to witness, like, kind of firsthand, a little bit of like the sacrifice that
absolutely, that
sons deal with, that fathers deal with, that people deal with to keep our country safe. And it's just touching, man.
Yeah, the guy that I played in, Thank You for Your Service, Adam Schumann. He, you know, because people say, you know, thank you for your service, and a lot of the time people say that sometimes to just alleviate their own guilt of having not served, but. You know, I've heard guys talk about it. It's weird. You're thanking me for something that, I signed up for, or I wanted to do, or you're thanking me for, you don't even know what my job was. And it's just a complicated kind of decorative term that we use out of lack of knowing. But he would say the thing that really broke him, he was, you know, filling up his, his truck with gas, and, you know, his Army, the big red one, and, you know, guy saw that, and, you know, basically just kind of shook his hand and, you know, said, like, welcome home, son, and, you know, glad you got home safe. And that's, you know, it's tough. But we can do what we do because those men and women are over there doing, you know, doing the dirty work.
I mean, our job is built on the freedom of speech, you know?
Yeah.
Both of our jobs are built on it. Like, it doesn't even exist if people aren't making the sacrifice for us. But yeah, that would be great to be able to talk with Gary Sinise. I know he does a lot with for veterans, and Yeah, it's nice to just be reminded. It's nice to be reminded of a space another reason just to have gratitude for the things that we have going on.
But also, it's like it's different parts of the. Like we're, growing up in Florida, I feel like there's so many people that, had family members in the military, but it's a lot more economic driven now, to where the military, it doesn't feel like the entire country is really a part of it, and it's really happening in very specific pockets. So it's it'll be interesting in the next 25 years, 50 years of who you kind of have to live in these certain areas to have a relationship with somebody who's serving, because that's what personalizes it.
Yeah, that's a good point, man. During in ancient Rome, they used to have the politicians were also on the battlefield, which is pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
So it was like the rules that they were making, if they were going to send people into battle, they were going to have to be associated with those rules. And I think it would be, who am I to say? I didn't serve, but it would be, I think maybe some of the rules we would make some of the choices we would make might be a little bit different if it felt
if you had skin in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's always some value in having skin in the game.
Yeah. I think that's just a tricky thing with politics in general, when you just can't recognize the elected officials and the leaders. You just feel like you cannot relate to them. They can't relate to you on any level. And it feels like those margins are getting wider.
Getting wider.
Right?